Hey, so we have finished talking about the sun and the moon. I definitely recommend if somebody's interested in that to go back and read it because there are just so many more verses that it becomes very extensive about, the parts of light that the moon gets and such. So now and that finishes that chapter, by the way. So we're now going to jump into chapter 3 of the 4th book, and this is called Heavenly Tablets. So Archangel Uriel, who was over the sun and the moon and all the luminaries, is still talking to Enoch here. And he continues on by saying, hey, listen, I've shown you everything. But he says, in the days of the sinner, their years shall be shortened, and their seed shall be tardy on the lands and the field. It says, the earth shall alter and shall not appear in their time. The rain shall be kept back, and the heaven shall withhold it. In those times, the fruits of the earth shall be backward and shall not grow in their time, and the fruits of the trees shall be withheld. The moon shall alter her order and not appear at her time. And in those days, the sun shall be seen, and he shall journey in the evening on the extremities of the great chariot in the west, and shall shine more brightly than accords with the order of light. So he's saying that everything in the end is going to be altered or changed, not like how it's supposed to. So imagine the moon not being where the moon should be. Talks about the fruits of the earth being backwards, which I think you can take that many different ways, not just necessarily actual fruit coming from trees, sure, but fruits of our life even. So he continues on and says, many chiefs of the stars shall transgress the order, and these shall alter their orbits and tasks and not appear at the seasons prescribed to them. So for anybody who loves astrology, I'm sure you can imagine how crazy this is if all of a sudden now the stars are not where they should be and where they always are. He says, the whole order of the stars shall be concealed from the sinners, and thoughts of those on earth shall err concerning them. They shall be altered from all ways. Yea, they shall err and take them to be gods. Definitely be mindful of that part, saying that, the sinners will confuse or take these stars as gods. I mean, there are people out there that pray to the stars or, ask the stars for stuff. It's letting you know here, definitely don't do that. And verse 9 it continues and says, and evil shall be multiplied upon them, and punishment shall come upon them so as to destroy all. He said unto me, Enoch is talking now, says, observe, Enoch, these heavenly tablets, and read what is written thereon, and mark every individual fact. So at this point, the 7 holy angels take Enoch back to his home. So let's see what happens there in the next part. Okay, so in the last part, Enoch finished speaking to Archangel Uriel, and it said that the 7 archangels ended up taking Enoch back to his home. So let's see what happens here. It says, this is book 4, it is also chapter 3. So we are now on verse 15. It says, the 7 holy ones brought me and placed me on the earth before the door of my house, and said to me, declare everything to thy son Methuselah, and show to all thy children that no flesh is righteous in the sight of the Lord, for he is their creator. 1 year we will leave thee with thy son, till thou givest thy commands, that thou mayest teach thy children and record for them, and testify to all thy children. And in the 2nd year they shall take thee from their midst. Okay, so that is interesting, because there's so many questions of people saying, well, if Enoch was in heaven, how do we have all this information now? Well, it states here that they actually took him back to his home. It said that they left him at the front door of his house, and they told him to tell your son, his son is Methuselah, tell your son all the things that you know now, and show all thy children. So all the people of his household, he is to explain to them everything that he has come across. They told him, the archangels told him, we will leave you here for 1 year, so you can teach and record this for them. So this way they're left with the knowledge, and then tell them all the things that you have seen. So we're going to jump right into chapter 4, and it's called 1 year to record. starts off with verse 1, and it says, "And now, my son Methuselah, all these things I am recounting to thee and writing down for thee. And I have revealed to thee everything, and given thee books concerning all these. So preserve, my son Methuselah, the books from thy father's hand, and see that thou deliver them to the generations of the world." And just in case someone says, oh, well, in one of the previous parts, we talked about writing things down being one of the things that the fallen taught us, like, is this evil? Is this not evil? The problem with the writing of things down really seems like it comes back to contracts. People signing contracts, against themselves that have led them into trouble. It's not so much as recording of things, but really it's what are we getting ourselves into when we sign things. So let's continue on. So Enoch's talking to his son and says, "I've given you this wisdom." He says, "And those who understand it shall not sleep, but shall listen with the ear, that they may learn this wisdom, and it shall please those that eat thereof better than good food." I like that line because it specifies that those who understand. Not everything we talk about, everyone is going to understand. The next part, Enoch discusses visions he had. Okay, so we are in book 4, chapter 5. We know that Enoch has been taken back home to explain to his son all the things that he saw. Enoch says in verse 2, he's talking to Methuselah. He says, "2 visions I saw before I took a wife, and the one was quite unlike the other. The first, when I was learning to write. The second, before I took thy mother, I saw a terrible vision. Regarding them, I prayed to the Lord." He says, "I was laying down in the house of my grandfather, Mahalalel, and I saw a vision of how heaven collapsed and was borne off and fell to the earth. And when it fell to the earth, I saw how the earth was swallowed up in a great abyss, and mountains were suspended on mountains, and hills sank down on hills, and high trees were rent from their stems and hurled down and sunk in the abyss." That's crazy. Let's continue. Enoch says he cried aloud and woke up, saying, "The earth is destroyed." He says, "My grandfather, Mahalalel, waked me as I lay near him, and he said, why do you cry, my son?" So he recounted to him the entire vision. His father said, or his grandfather said, "Now, my son, arise and make petition to the Lord of glory, since thou art a believer, that a remnant may remain on the earth, and that he may not destroy the whole earth. My son, from heaven all this will come upon the earth, and upon the earth there will be great destruction." So this is wild. Like, what do you mean heaven collapsed? Like, what does this mean the earth was swallowed up into an abyss? I don't know, but we know this is early in Enoch's life where he was still living with his grandfather. So he's probably very young here. But for some reason, he had this vision. Let's see if they say anything else about it. Enoch says, "I lifted up my hands in righteousness, and I blessed the Holy and Great One, and spake with the breath of my mouth, and with the tongue of flesh, which God has made for the children of the flesh of men, that they should speak therewith. And he gave them breath and a tongue and a mouth that they should speak." I want to stop on that part because technically we are really the only creatures that God has created that can speak with understanding, like with a consciousness, like we speak with understanding. And it shows you how important our words are. It really is a gift. And we need to be very careful of what we say and how we say it, because our words were given to us. It is one of the great powers that we have as people over animals, is that we can speak things just as God spoke life into everything that we see here. In the next part, Enoch talks about his second vision that he had as he's telling his son. Okay, so the last part, we heard of Enoch's first vision that he had when he was young, living in his grandfather's house. So now he's going to tell his son Methuselah the second vision that he had. He says, "Before I took thy mother Edna, I saw in a vision on my bed, and behold, a bull came forth from the earth, and that bull was white. And after it came forth a heifer, and along with this came forth 2 bulls, one of them black, and the other red." Side note, a heifer is a young female cow. So we have a bull, young female cow, and we have 2 other bulls. He says, "The black bull gored the red one and pursued him over the earth, and thereupon I could no longer see the red bull. But the black bull grew, and that heifer went with him. And I saw that many oxen proceeded from him, which resembled and followed him. And the cow, the first one, went from the presence of that first bull in order to seek that red one, but found him not, and lamented with a great lamentation over him, and sought him. Then the first bull came to her and quieted her, and from that time onward she cried no more. And after that she bore another white bull, and after him she bore many bulls and many black cows. All right, so there are a lot of cattle in this story, so let's just break it down. So the black bull, he gored the red bull, and they no longer saw the red bull. Now the one female cow went to go find the red bull, couldn't find it, it's crying, and the first bull, which was, I think, the white one, came to comfort her. So she has now given birth to another white bull, and apparently a bunch of other bulls and cows after the fact. He continues and says, and I saw in my sleep that white bull likewise grow and become a great white bull. And from him proceeded many white bulls, and they resembled him. And they began to beget many white bulls, which resembled them, one following the other. So the baby white bull grew up and is flourishing and having many generations of other white bulls. Enoch says, I saw with mine eyes as I slept the heaven above, and behold, a star fell from heaven, and it arose and ate and pastured amongst the oxen. He says, I looked towards the heaven, and I saw many stars descend and cast themselves down from heaven like the first star. They became bulls amongst the cattle and pastured amongst them as well. So really interesting. For anyone who is into like color theory, I would love to hear your thoughts, because they specify certain colors of the cows, which we know white tends to be divinity, purity, the black cow, the red one. And also it talking about stars falling. Who are they talking about here? Let's discuss it in the next part. Hey, so in the last part, we were talking about the second vision that Enoch had. And there was a verse in it, and this is the book 4, chapter 5, called Visions. Verse 29, when he spoke about a star falling from heaven. That was interesting because it was one star, and it said it fell amongst the other cows, and it became one of them. It continues and said, I looked towards heaven, and then I saw many more stars descend and cast themselves down from heaven like the first star, and they also became bulls amongst the cattle and pastured with them amongst them. He says, behold, they all let out their privy members like horses, and they began to cover the cows of the oxen, and they all became pregnant and bore elephants, camels, and donkeys. It says all of the oxen feared them and were affrighted at them, and began to bite with their teeth and to devour and to gore with their horns. They began, moreover, to devour those oxen, and behold, all the children of the earth began to tremble and quake before them, and to flee from them. And again I saw how they began to gore each other and to devour each other, and the earth began to cry aloud. It sounds like the first demon, which many people will use the name devil or Satan, and then the other stars that fell after it sounds like the 200 that came with him, the fall of the stars, the fall of the angels. And when they came to earth, what did they do? They mated with the oxen, the female cows, and started creating unnatural beast, because a bull and a cow should not be creating elephants and donkeys. So to me, this was the vision that he was given that was going to explain to him all the things that were happening on a spiritual level. Crazy, right? Let's continue. He says, I raised mine eyes again to heaven and saw in the vision, there came forth from heaven beings who were like white men, and 4 went from that place, and 3 with them. So we have introduced 7 beings here described as white. So typically that means something that's enlightened, a enlightened being. So 4 went one place, 3 also were with them. So let's see what else is happening. He says, those 3 that came last grabbed me by my hand and took me up away from the generations of the earth. They raised me up to a lofty place and showed me a tower raised high above the earth, and all the hills were lowered.
One said to me, "Remain here till thou seest everything that befalls those elephants, camels, donkeys, and the stars and the oxen and all of them." Then I saw one of the first four. He seized the first star which had fallen from heaven. Meet me in the next part.